Federal government unveils Nutrition 774 initiative.
Senate seeks comprehensive plan to prevent flooding in Nigeria.
House of Representatives suggest telecom networks and financial systems used by bandits be investigated.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we will delve into Nigeria's legislature 64 years after independence.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
All right. Nigeria's legislature has metamorphosed from a gathering of representatives only by name rather than function to an institution with structures that indicate its significant role in governance.
Exactly. And at independence in 1960, Nigeria adopted the British parliamentary system and established a bicameral legislature, of course, comprising of the Senate, which was then referred to as the upper house. And they include 7 senators representing each region, and they were selected at the joint sitting of the regional houses.
You're right, Claire. The House of Representatives, also referred to as the lower house, consisted of elected 305 members. On October 1st, 1963, Nigeria became a republic with a new constitution. The parliament still consisted of a Senate and a House of Representatives, with no difference in composition of the parliament in the 1960 and 1963 constitutions.
All right, and after that, that's post-independent now, the legislature moved away from the inherited British parliamentary system adopted during the First Republic, and now adopted a more presidential outlook, and that began, of course, in the Second Republic in 1979.
Yeah, the 1st of October 1979 ushered in the Second Republic with a new governing system. The presidential system adopted in the Second Republic was marked differently from the First Republic's parliamentary system.
Indeed, and of course there are quite significant differences between then and now, and the fusion of the executive and legislative powers during the presidential system promotes separation of powers, which wasn't there during the parliamentary system. And of course, among the separation of powers, you had 3 branches: the legislature, executive, and the judiciary.
And in 1992, Nigeria's Third Republic was not fully democratic because there was no democratically elected civilian president.
Of course, that was during the military, period, which of course had authoritarian government. But recall that all the laws passed by the Senate and House of Representatives had to also pass through the National Defense and Security Council of Nigeria for final approval by the president. Now, the Third Republic has been described as half military, half civilian.
That's true. Nigeria's Fourth Republic and its constitution later began in May 1999. Let's also mention that the incessant military interventions also truncated democracy in these post-independent years.
All right. So speaking of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that ushered in, of course, the bicameral legislature at the National Assembly. Now, the state houses of assembly also are unicameral.
It also barred the legislative institutions at the national and state levels from making laws with retrospective effect. The Senate has 109 members, 3 senators representing each of the 36 states and 1 representing the Federal Capital Territory.
You know, the membership of the House of Representatives actually, declined over the years. During the parliamentary and, of course, the presidential, before, the Fourth Republic, the number was much more. But of course, the House of Representatives now consists of 360 members, each representing their constituency. And the Constitution empowers the National Assembly to make laws through legislation that have been passed by both the Senate and the House of Representatives.
You're right, and the president has to assent to the bill to become a law, except if he withholds the assent. Nigeria has 15 Senate presidents and the same number of speakers of the House of Representatives, 15.
15. All right. In all of this, we're not giving you all the history. We're just giving you high points of the history that we must put into perspective when we're having our conversation. But in all of that, the emphasis is on the fact that the legislature plays a very central role, has played a very central role in our democracy. It represents the people, makes the laws, and oversights the executive and the judicial arms of government.
Well, with several challenges, Claire, currently hinder the effectiveness of the National Assembly in performing its lawmaking function. These majorly include low capacity of most legislators, poor legislative-executive relations, negative public perception, and corruption.
Okay. Well, another,
Anyway, those are some of the issues.
Some of the issues, but a main one, which we often hear, is transparency, accountability, and of course effectiveness in the discharge of legislative oversight in Nigeria. But Demola, there's also a major one, which is inclusiveness, and this has been a major agitation for the gender. That's female inclusion in legislative representation. It's been a major hurdle to cross.
Anyway, it's one of the issues we'll look at during the discussion.
It's a major hurdle.
What is a major hurdle? Well, we'll cross it.
I like that. Thank you. We will cross it.
So on Good Morning Nigeria today, our attention is on Nigeria legislature after 64 years of nationhood. We have guests joining us shortly. Welcome to the program. I am Ademola Adeoye.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. Let me also warmly welcome you to today's program. And we are reaching you on the network service of the NTA Live. As usual, Chukwu Diokolu Gwaja, alias Chooks the Boy, will soon bounce in. And in the words of Victor Azu, maybe he's somewhere in the building. He'll be joining us much later for the newspaper review. But for now, here is Olajide Bello with the highlights of the morning news. Jide, I'm sure you went there when the legislature, when we had the Legislative Council of Nigeria.
Obviously, I'm not like an ancient of days, so definitely you didn't expect me to be there.
Are you referring to someone here?
Well, I'm not calling names anyways. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Ademola. Here is the morning news. The federal government has unveiled Nutrition 774 initiative, a framework for comprehensive vision for a nationwide nutrition program to address malnutrition and food insecurity in Nigeria. Vice President Kashim Shettima, during a roundtable with development partners at the presidential villa, said the initiative aligns with President Tinubu's administration's broader focus on food security and availability across Nigeria.
It's a very, very focused, multi-sectoral approach towards alleviating our challenges. The President is irrevocably, firmly committed to this initiative.
The Senate wants the federal government to have in place a comprehensive action plan to tackle recurring flood disaster in Nigeria. The legislators commended President Bola Tinubu for setting up the Disaster Relief Fund and called for allocation in the 2025 budget for the dredging of rivers Benue and Niger as a preventive measure against flood. And the House of Representatives is calling on the Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy to work closely with security agencies to track ransom payments to bandits. Lawmakers at Tuesday's plenary say there is a compelling need to deploy technology and financial intelligence to crack down on criminal syndicates in the country. A joint security team in Kebbi State have recovered the body of abducted district head Kanya Isa Daya in Wasagu local government area of Kebbi State, while 9 people were rescued alive. The Director of Security, Kebbi State Cabinet Office, Abdurrahman Usman, disclosed that the team engaged the bandits in a gun duel and forcefully rescued the victims. He explained how the success story was possible following consistent efforts of Kebbi State Governor Nasir Idris in supporting the security agencies with all necessary tools to achieve results. Nigeria's First Lady Oluremi Tinubu says paying requisite attention to early child education is a strategic means of shaping the life of the child towards achieving a formidable future not only for the individual but the nation as a whole. She stated this while participating at a high-level forum of women leaders in Bujumbura, Burundi. Following a successful launch of 2,000 compressed natural gas tricycles on the 1st of October, the federal government has launched a portal that would ensure youth not only benefit but also participate in developing the CNG project. Minister of State for Youth Development, Ayodele Olawande, stated this in Abuja. And authorities in Cameroon have assured that the country's President Paul Biya is well and alive. The country's Minister of Communications, Rene Emmanuel, said in a statement read on state radio that the President is in good health and will be back in the country any moment from now. Similarly, Andre Magnus, Cameroon's ambassador to France, also issued a statement saying that President Paul Biya has never been hospitalized in Clermont or anywhere in France and has been speculated, expressing his displeasure at the spread of rumors. And that's the news at this time. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Claire and Ademola after the commercial break. Do stay with us.
My administration took over leadership of our country 16 months ago at a critical juncture. The economy faced many headwinds and our physical security highly impaired. We found ourselves at a decent crossroad where we must choose between two paths: reform for progress and prosperity, or carry on the business as usual and collapse. We decided to reform our political economy and defense architecture.
Nivea Dry Deodorant with 72-hour reliable odor protection from Dual Effect Formula for a dry and fresh skin feeling that gives you confidence every day. Nivea Dry is now available in 25 ml for 72-hour odor and sweat protection.
Can you flex your vocals for us? It could be one of your songs, by the way.
People fall in love in mysterious ways.
So why do they call you Able Child?
They called me that when I was in school. That was my nickname then in school.
Any reason in particular why they called you Able Child?
Yeah, because I was actually one of the brilliant students.
Oh, say, mommy! That answer right there. You must, if it's not on this board, problem. That means the people that answer this survey, they have body odor. Hey.
Nigeria means a lot to me.
And Nigeria means peaceful cohesion.
My country.
We continue to pray, and then hopefully we will come to understand that unity of purpose, unity of living together.
Our ethnic beliefs and background and culture is our strength.
Ever since the amalgamation period of 1914 to date, about 109 years ago, the people of Nigeria live very peacefully with one another.
I think diversity helps a lot to enhance robust development in Nigeria.
All over the country, you have so many ethnic groups, over 250. That is enough to tell you that this is a blessed country that, God has kept, together as one indivisible entity.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we swear in color, with undying demand, we make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Each ethnicity is unique, we are more than just a nation. We are Nigeria, we are Nigeria, strength in unity, we know they carry life. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Join the party on AfroSport TV as Libya's Mediterranean Knights host the Super Eagles at the Matazo Benania Stadium in the AFCON 2025 qualifiers on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, live on AfroSport TV at 8 p.m. West African time for what promises to be an unforgettable encounter in the AFCON 2025 qualifiers. AfroSport, your freedom of sport.
All right, welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria, and thank you for staying with us. Let's welcome Chukwudi Okolugbaja in just a moment.
Well, Chooks.
Yeah, the moment has arrived for the introduction that she was necking
Chukwudi.
How are you, Demo?
You can't keep
I'm doing
even
great,
the small
and you?
secret.
Who told you that?
Eh?
Do you know
It's
how
his
much
age.
Do you know how many billions I have in my bank? How could you say that I don't keep secrets?
Don't reveal it. Don't reveal it now. Don't
Claire,
Yes.
how are you?
Well, today, Demola is taking us back in history.
Okay.
I only hope I can remember my history.
You could, whether you could catch up with
whether
us.
I could catch up, yes, with history.
You could manage. You're in the intermediate category. The more. Old school remains the best school. Yeah, the headlines.
I have New Telegraph for you. New Telegraph, is leading with the issues in Rivers State. Rivers crisis, it captions it. Fubara must obey court judgments on LG election. And that's coming from the Minister of the FCT, Wiki. The details of that story you can read up on pages 25 and 28. And of course, there are other stories trending there. Let's quickly see the picture story there. And that's because of the significance of the boat mishap, which of course continues to happen in some parts of our country. And here we see the Nigerian MD, Nigeria Inland Waterways Authority, NIWA, Bola Oyebanji, in Gbajibo, Kwara State, paying a condolence visit. And Jakpa menace, increase tertiary institutions budget in 2025 to stem brain drain. Senate tells federal government Nigerians should put country over financial gain. Akpabio. And FG approves Dangote refinery as sole supplier of jet fuel to Nigeria's airline operators. Details of that you can find on page 8. Supreme Court to hear governors so challenging EFCC's legality October the 22nd is on page 4, and that story is trending on the right-hand column, which is to your left. And government should understand its policies are causing Nigeria's pain. That's Adebayo. We've received 305,300 human rights violation complaints. NHRC, Human Rights Commission, it's there. Lagos Calabar Highway will be ready by May 2025. And this from the Minister of Works, Sumahi. It's on page 28. And there are other stories trending. Suffering caused by Benin-Asaba highway failure worries Delta government. And Niago, I guess that's the Commissioner for Works there speaking. And Labour Party will appeal judgment on Abure, that's Usman. Pre-election mission, Jonathan, former president, leads West African elders to Ghana, meets candidates and others. And FDIs trending just on, above the nameplate. FDIs, Nigeria records $2.60 billion capital importation in second quarter of 2024, but loses $83 billion to crude export. All right, that's the outlook of the New Telegraph paper this morning. Ademola has Daily Trust.
Okay, before the Daily Trust, I have the People's Daily newspaper with me as well. And I think I'll start with the story just below the nameplate. Federal government attract $50 billion investment in oil sector, says Petroleum State Minister. Supreme Court hears 16 state suits against EFCC Establishment Act of October 2022. The screening committee uncovers over 3,850 fake political appointees on Niger State payroll. That's all about that People's Daily newspaper. Then I move on to the Daily Trust newspaper. Just below the nameplate of Daily Trust newspaper, we have Supreme Court to hear 16 state suit against the FCC. Then fresh order for LG autonomy as Soludo introduces bill for funds deduction. Details of that story can be found on page 13. Boko Haram kills 2 soldiers. Village head, others in Borno ambush. Details on page 4. Cholera-related deaths rise as Lagos, Jigawa, Kano lead in casualties. Over 10,837 suspected cases recorded nationwide in 9 months. 359 die in 21 states. NCDC blames rainfall, open defecation as per preferred solution. So we can get the details on page 4 of the Daily Trust. Bandit kill abducted Kebbi district head. Operatives rescue 8. Paul Biya in good health. Cameroon government says. The details on page 6. We are yet to lift oil from Dangote refinery. Ipman. Details of that story can be found on page 33. 5 missing, 20 rescued in Lagos boat collision. Details on page 5. Chooks.
The press can't do reconstructive surgery on a patient that is unwilling. But concerning the Rivers crisis, I'm just looking at the headlines. Fubara is fuming. He is vowing that all those behind arson in Rivers must account for their atrocities. The headline attributed to Wike is Fubara must obey court order on LG elections. So sometimes you don't know whether it's the press fanning the embers. Why would Wike's advisors not ask him to, first of all, talk about the arson in Rivers, to hear whether he will sound pacifist too, whether he would say something like, that is to be condemned. Then as a second
Actually,
layer.
he said that yesterday during his interview on one of the televisions.
I saw where he was blaming the thing on the government side there.
Well,
Yes.
I listened to the interview actually, and his emphasis was actually that the governor must obey court orders.
So that is the message, his main message.
Yes.
Okay, listen to what he said. Listen to what he said. First of all, speaking on Channel's television program, Wike condemned the violence and destruction of properties in the state following the conduct of local government elections. And then the other paragraph, sorry, Chukwudi, he said, no decent person that believes in peace and stability of any nation would say that he wants to support violence, destruction, and that he doesn't want people to live in harmony.
Kindly stop. So, I blame the editor. It's his choice. You see, editorial discretion is something you can't fight. So,
you blame
if
the
I did the interview, why would I not play up that Wike says the destruction there should be condemned before I now start talking about is the editor's
No, because he emphasized more on the governor. You know,
I know.
Yeah,
you
know that kind of thing.
You see, the devil is in what? The details.
But you know
you understand?
But you know,
he emphasized the discretion of the editor to arrange his headlines.
But you know exactly the editorial judgment, editorial preference.
Yes, that is
what
just
will attract readership more and all that. You see, this thing about journalism.
But you know, sometimes again, like he's saying, yes, we must also put the country into consideration.
That's it.
We must do that. We must integrate that in our decisions, in our preferences.
Actually, I'm not talking against Wike or talking against Fubara. I'm talking about how we too can be part of helping democracy. You understand?
Precisely. That's what they call responsive journalism.
Exactly. Yes. It's very important we discuss these things.
Yes.
Because I hate this scenario, this suggestion that journalists are infallible. They are not. Some of them are card-carrying members of political parties, and they are on the editorial desk.
Can you prove it?
Can you hear a journalist talking?
I'm asking you a question because that's an allegation.
It's okay.
You know, I think
no problem.
The issue.
Let's not get involved in a partisan way.
Yes, the issue.
That's the point at the end
issue
of the day.
in Rivers State needs all parties concerned, all peace-loving people, because you know this cliche that they say, you know, when two big elephants fight, it is usually the grass that suffers. You know, keeps resonating. It keeps you on. So when you fight, when two people are fighting, big men are fighting, it's usually the people who suffer. No. Now the government infrastructure, you understand, it's been destroyed. It is the people's taxpayers' money that will be used to you know, reconstruct.
I like where we're going. We can't keep on chastising politicians. Again, I take it to the press. What you play up in reportage matters a lot to social engineering. Maybe it is time for us to tell Rivers people that you are suffering because you allow politicians that might not be showing you enough consideration to hold sway. A police commissioner told me in Lagos when I was a young reporter, a society gets the kind of police force it deserves. You see, look, journalism has responsibilities. There are times you need to turn to the people. Who created the Yahoo boys? Chukwudi goes to the village. He's only able to give 5,000 naira to one old mama there. A Yahoo boy comes, gives 100,000 naira to the old lady, and he gets a chieftaincy after about 2 months. Chukwudi is a non-entity. The mirror has to be turned on society if you are to move forward in this country. Let's stop chasing who done it. Only looking in the. I was always quarreling with journalists in the newsroom anyway.
And again, we must also look at our legal system, because the root of, I mean, if you didn't have two judgments from Abuja and from here, we probably would not be here, because Mr. Wike is saying obey the court's judgment. Which of the court's judgment?
Claire, may God bless you in journalism.
May God bless you too as we wrap up.
Quickly, as we wrap up, cholera-related deaths rise as Lagos, Jigawa, Kano. You can see that the places where it's happening are the concentration in terms of population. So please, let's be more careful in terms of hygienic handling of affairs. The floods have not helped matters, because dirty water is actually what causes cholera more than any other thing. You understand?
Just before we go, please, this is from NIWA. It's not just paying condolence visits. We need more action. We need regulation. We need NIWA to, back and bite by regulating, both drivers.
Always stretch the acronym.
Yes.
Yeah, so that
NIWA, Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority.
Thank you. So they're talking about maritime people.
Maritime, yes. Both mishaps and all that. It's not when they happen.
Yes, just like we had in Lagos.
Yes.
Anyway, we have to just close this chapter. Yes. The director is signaling. So we'll take a break now. Good Morning Nigeria continues. Stay with us.
As your president, I assure you that we are committed to finding sustainable solutions to alleviate the suffering of our citizens. Once again, I plead for your patience as the reforms we are implementing show positive signs, and we are beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
A new edition of TV Guide is out.
This time, we got up close and personal with the transformational legislator, the Deputy President of the Senate, distinguished Senator Barrel Jibrin.
We've created a difference in terms of representation through interventions that have brought an unprecedented infrastructural development to my area.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more.
It is indeed a park of excitement as we take you through every aspect of life. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space.
TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
I think Amaka should just move out of the house. Yes.
No. Standing out of the house is not the right thing to do.
Oh, there you go again with your sentimental family stuff.
Baby, if our aim is to stop this affair, it is best achieved under our roof.
You do something terrible and you'll be acting innocent.
What are you going on about?
Don't ask me that question again. You couldn't even control yourself in the presence of our visitors.
What are you accusing me of, woman?
My son, I don't know how serious you are with my daughter, but there's something that needs to be done urgently before you move any further.
Anything, just anything, just say it. I'm ready to do anything.
There is a spell that needs to be removed.
A spell?
Family forever. The story of our lives.
The federal government of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables, and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC. Office of the National Security Advisor.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. As a prompt for our conversation this morning on the legislature as Nigeria marks our 64th independence, here is a background report compiled by Dennis Temple.
Nigeria gained independence from British colonial rule on October 1st, 1960. The initial years saw a parliamentary system influenced by British government. However, political instability of the period led to a series of military coups, significantly impacting the development of democratic institutions, including the legislature. The return to democratic rule marked a turning point, establishing a bicameral National Assembly comprising the Senate and the House of Representatives. This body was tasked with lawmaking, oversight of the executive branch, and representing the diverse interests of Nigerians' multi-ethnic society. Since after the independence, the nation experienced frequent changes in government, especially during the military rule, weakened legislative processes and institutions, coupled with what some opinion mothers see a pervasive culture of corruption, in most cases undermined legislative integrity, leading to lack of public trust in elected representatives. Another issue is that of inadequate funding, which hinders the capacity of the legislature to function effectively and engage meaningfully with constituents. On other parts, ethical and regional tensions have often resulted in regional disparities in representation and legislative priorities, complicating consensus building. Despite these challenges, there are opinions that Nigeria has made a stride towards building a more effective legislature in order to achieve a viral democracy and increase public confidence. Navigating the nation's journey towards addressing existing challenges and leveraging opportunities for reform. This is Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, that background report was compiled by our correspondent Dennis Temple. Thank you, Dennis, for that compilation. And let's quickly begin by introducing our guests who are already in the studio. First, I'd like to welcome Professor Kabiru Mato, political scientist, who's joining us live in the studio here. Thank you, Prof. Good to see you once again.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. And also Dr. Nta Enang. And I'd like to, if you permit me, describe Dr. Enang as one of our pioneer faces on Good Morning Nigeria. But of course, he was a former senior special assistant to the president on National Assembly liaison matters, of course, at the Senate. He was also a former special assistant to the president on Niger Delta affairs. And we are very glad to welcome Dr. Enang to our studio once again. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Also, I have the pleasure of introducing one of the members who is here with us, Honorable Ejiro Gane Francis Waive. He is the Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Rules and Business and member represented Ugeli North and South Udu Federal Constituency. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right.
Okay.
Also joining us from Jos is Dr. Abel Daniel Ochibo. Deputy Clerk, Administration, House of Representatives, National Assembly, and President, CEO, Creativity Management Consultant. Dr. Ochigbo, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. You're welcome. So let's just kickstart our conversation this morning. Let's start with Professor Mato. Let's look at the legislature past 64 years. Let's just give a general assessment of the legislature. How effective has the Nigerian legislature been in representing the interest of the citizens and in promoting the development of the country?
Well, thank you very much. I think in analyzing the history and contributions of the Nigerian legislature, to the development of national democracy, it's important to compartmentalize it into two. One is, as the report rightly mentioned, the First Republic, which was a follow-up of the colonial administration that nurtured the parliamentary system of government. And parliaments under the parliamentary system of government are always different from parliaments under presidential system of government. Because under parliamentary system of government, we have what we call fusion of responsibility. There is no clear-cut dichotomy between the legislature and the executive. So from colonial period up till 1966, I will say the parliament did play the role that it was supposed to play, especially being an infant, just emerging from protracted colonial rule and trying to institute a nation building. Then we of course had a legislature between 1979 and until 1983 December, when the military struck again. There we had the presidential system of government, because the military had tilted, the country from that parliamentary system to a presidential system of government. And the thinking was simple, that the parliamentary system of government encouraged a lot of ethnicity, regionalism, and so on and so forth. And they thought that going presidential would provide the ample opportunity, for Nigerians to interact the more, and forge national cohesion and so on and so forth. And if you recall, that has been the major, preoccupation of the military. But the first time that Nigeria has had an uninterrupted civil administration was between 1999 and that, about 25 years of civil rule. And, like I did say previously, most of the time, whether it's military or civilian, there are always two arms of government, in function. That's the executive and the judiciary. And even if it is under military rule, you find that a substantial number of people who run the affairs of state actually are civilians. The judiciary has never been made of any military personality, except, of course, in cases of military tribunals looking at specific military issues. But then the history of Nigerian parliament, I could say, started in earnest from 1999 to date. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a learning process, because the interruption that we've had from 1966 until 1979 and from 1983 until 1999, were sufficient period that the parliament, as the bastion of democracy, in every democracy, the legislature is the foundation of democracy. It is always the house of the people. That's where the nitty-gritty representation of the polity, is found. Yeah, so they have done well, but, with fundamental lapses and fundamental problems, which of course need to be corrected, going forward. But I think, again, I will give the parliament a pass mark to some extent, but I will also agree with the excuse that perhaps the successive interregnums, the failure to have it flow over a long period of time, like the executive and the judicial arms of government have had since political independence, has really denied, the parliament the latitude to serve the Nigerian citizenry in the manner that it should.
All right. Let me take Senator Nta, and I'd like us to look at it from the content, context, and functions prism. since we're looking at history, and in terms of content and structure and composition, I'd like you to take us down memory lane, briefly, and look at the evolution, beginning from the time we transited from the Legislation Council of Nigeria down to the First Republic when we, adopted the parliamentary, and then down to 79 when we became, a presidential legislative system, and now. Can you just give us the significant evolution that has occurred?
Thank you very much. I think you've given the evolution, so I'll just key into your presentation. Now, let me congratulate Nigeria at 64, and let me congratulate the legislature for how far it's gone for the years. And by God's grace, I have been a significant part of it, because I was in the State House of Assembly, I was a councillor in the Legislative Council of the local government. Then I was in the House of Representatives, I was in the Senate. So I have seen all at the legislative level, and of course as advisor and presidential liaison to the National Assembly. The legislature has done well, and by way of history, you've given as much as it. But I think the one I would want to give so much is what we've been able to do at the when we had a kind of diarchy, when we had a kind of situation where we had a military president in 1992-93, and we had the legislature, we had the National Assembly, you had the State House of Assembly at the state level, and you had a governor at the state level, but you had the military president at the federal level. And then after the military intervention of 1993 with Abacha's incoming, that was dissolved. The Constituent Assembly was again set up, and then after that, we had the 1999 elections, and the legislature came in force. And after the 1999 inauguration of the National Assembly, the legislature has been in existence till today. And it has had very great impact. I think for the past 24 years, this is the longest we've had as the existence of the legislature. And we've had so much transition, so much progress, and the legislature has made so much impact, because one of the things that we normally would refer to is what we call the doctrine of necessity, where we did not have a provision in the Constitution that where there are issues in the presidency, and the president seems to be either incommunicado or a situation you couldn't speak about it, and a situation where I think one of the most difficult things I had to do was drafting the motion on was it acting president, or president acting for, or acting in the state of the president and acting. So we just had that, because the legislature had, I was chairman of Rules and Business for 16 years by God's grace, and most of this fell on me. So the legislature had to find a means, and that is when we invented the doctrine of necessity. That is, it is not there in the law. It was not anticipated. It has never happened. So what do? It is necessary for us to invent a principle, and then we took the decision we took, which allowed President Jonathan to take office as acting president. So these are the kind of things that give the legislature give the legislature a credibility and credence. Now, when we talk of the legislature, we talk of the legislature at the national level and the state level. And of course, I've heard some issues now before in the legislature, which says upper chamber and lower chamber. And you heard, I have more powers than you have less powers than me. These are all part of the growth, and it stands out the legislature. But one thing is important. The Constitution says there shall be a National Assembly. So the totality of the 360 members, 109 senators make up one National Assembly. One National Assembly. and what one arm does and the other does not do, if the Constitution says it shall be done by the National Assembly, that thing stands not done. So there is one National Assembly. Power is only what the Constitution gives to you. Now there is only one disappointment we have, because when you talk of the legislature, it includes the state houses of assembly. I want to apologize to my colleagues and my friends in the state houses of assembly that very sharply they have lost honor, and they have lost, and they have acted in a manner that is lower than a parastatal. The state houses of assembly. The state houses of assembly does not do and has not done what the Constitution expected of them. If they did, we will not have the kind of collapse of state government, collapse in the government of the state or governance of the state that we have today.
You know, before you draw us into the issues,
yes,
the issues, I had asked about the composition and structure.
Okay.
And that's because I want us, today a lot of people are saying we should go back to a unicameral, legislature. Some people are, agitating for that. But we've always had, a bicameral legislature. And even at the time, at the First Republic, when our head of state was only ceremonial, there was also no separation of powers. Yes. So, and I'm asking, how did that, composition impact on legislative activities at that time, so that we have an understanding of our evolutionary trends?
Now, Dr. Mato, Professor Mato had given a lot of the background of that, so I didn't need to. I thought I didn't need to go so much into it. But you have the unicameral and the bicameral, and coming fast, I want to say that those who say that we should have one arm of the legislature, unicameral, I think it is not correct. And it is, a lot of people seem to justify it on the basis of the cost. A lot of people think it is expensive, it is costly. I don't think so. It is the functions and functionality. It is only that the way and the kind of the reputation, I want to say, reputational question that seems to come up now in many directions has seemed to bring up that question of we should have a unicameral legislature. But the bicameral is the best, because what one arm of government does not see, the other arm of government, one arm of the legislature does not see, one chamber, the other camp will see. That is why you see, if the bill is passed first in the Senate and it is transmitted to the House of Representatives for consideration, not concurrence. Because before you concur, you'll have to consider every clause of it. And whichever one you agree, if you don't, then you pass different versions, and they have a conference committee which will now consider the differences, and then they will now have one passage of the bill. So it is whatever the cost what we're bearing now, which is not too much. It is important that we should keep having two chambers of the legislature. You could consider even in terms of budget, and in terms of the functions. Yes, I agree that the Constitution has given the Senate certain other powers, which does not make it bigger than the other. I want to emphasize. The Constitution just thought that, yes, there are 1 or 3 members, 3 senators per state, and they should have the power to confirm ministers, to confirm some statutory or constitutional appointees, to confirm ambassadors, and do certain other things. But when it comes to appropriation, the Senate, the House is more powerful, So it's more powerful than the Senate, because if there is need for us there is a disagreement which they need to go into voting, the House will always come with the 360, and the Senate will only come with the 109. And the Senate is not even up to 1/3 of the House. And that is why in the House of daring the Senate, we're always daring the Senate. Come, he said, come. You know.
I think the most important in every federal system, there is supposed to be a bicameral legislature. You know, it serves a very important function, and that's function of one representation and another one. The House of Representatives, for instance, is populated on the basis of population, while the Senate is a proportional representation. Otherwise, Bayelsa State, for instance, Nasarawa State, Gombe State, you know, a lot of these states that have 14 local government areas and so on, cannot be the same, you know, with Lagos, with Kano, with Oyo, and the rest of them. So it's a shock absorber. It's a shock absorber. It's fear of the minorities in the federation is always allayed, you know, when you have the second chamber. So
I like how you termed it, shock absorber.
Yes.
I like how you termed it. But I'm also concerned that even before then, the membership at the Senate was not as much now.
No, but it has always been proportional.
Eh?
Yeah,
before the second,
in the Second Republic, it was five
states
when we had because the number of states were fewer, that's why it wasn't up to 109. That was why it wasn't.
So this is why this is the justification for the composition and structure, and I will always advocate the bicameral, where you have two chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives. In existence.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. Okay, let's bring in Honorable Waive. I mean, we've been talking about the evolution of the legislature since independence and how impactful, you know, it has been. Would you say all is well with the legislative arm of government in this country?
Yeah, I want to thank you for the question. The challenge really for Nigeria and the Nigerian people is that because of the many years of military rule, we are not familiar with democratic norms, particularly in the legislature. You know that anytime there is military takeover, it's the legislature that suffers. You can't compare the Armed Forces Ruling Council or the Supreme Military Council to the Senate or the House of Representatives, you know. So the culture of how parliamentary democracy is run, many Nigerians are not familiar with it. So they are only used to military decrees, monarchy, what the king says. So the understanding that the legislature is the foundation of democracy, because without a legislature, there is no democracy. The Constitution even begins by discussing the legislature first, because you have to make the laws before somebody, the executive, will execute them, and then if there's any challenge, the judiciary will interpret. So the legislature comes first. But because we've not always been there, Nigerians have not really come to terms with the role that we play, such that there haven't been suggestions, sadly, by some people in authority, questioning the necessity for a legislature. but it's very sad that people can think that way, especially some people in the executive in the past.
There must be a reason for them thinking that way, actually.
No, the reasons are not nationalistic. If you look at those discussions in context, you will find that these were people who had a messianic complex that wanted to govern this country like a monarchy or a military dictatorship. Otherwise, the legislature is very vital, very, very vital, because where there is no law, there will be anarchy and there will be chaos. There will be no country without laws. So the legislature plays that role. And with the background of what we have gone through, the legislature has done very well. Prof said we'll give a pass mark. Maybe because I'm a sitting member, I would say more than a pass mark. Given the challenges that we have gone through in evolving. But you can see that we are maturing. There was a time at the beginning of this republic when the leadership, changed per per minute. That time you talked about the banana PSP and all that. But now you find people who serve the full term and all that. And looking at what happened during the parliamentary time in the First Republic and now, the stability you now find, and you find that because the president that has emerged or that always emerged from a presidential system has a popular appeal in that he must get 2/3 of the votes from the entire country. The separation of powers now gives the legislature that opportunity for the checks and balances. And so you've seen the legislature come in to intervene at different times. Take the passage of the NDDC bill, for instance. They were able to, the president's veto, the legislature was able to enact that law without the president's signature. So you find that the legislature is doing very well. The first law always is the budget, the Appropriation Act. And that is what the executive has to implement. And every year, the legislature has not failed in carrying out that responsibility. In fact, in the last 5-6 years, it has always done it in such a way that the country has been returned to a January to December budgetary year, such that you could do effective economic planning, businesses, and all of that. And many legislators in Nigeria have gone through trainings, and when we do comparative legislative practices, you'll find that many Nigerian legislators have done very well. And compared to their counterparts in other countries abroad, we can give the legislature kudos, despite the situations in which we live in. The other day we were in a country in the Western world, and you see the amount of aids that a legislature is having, professors, well-groomed people who are schooled in various disciplines. And some of them 2021 at their disposal, architects, engineers. But here, we don't have that pool. And many of us have to, try to learn by the ropes at the worst. We bring in consultants to talk to us about the particular subject area. So looking at all of this, you'll want to say that the legislature has done very well. And the challenge we faced, again from our people, is that there's this notion that it's 2 terms for every elective office. So in some places, in some constituencies of senatorial districts, there's this rotation that is in the minds of the people. So every election year, you bring in a new person who comes again and starts to learn how to move a motion, learn how to draft a bill, and all that kind of thing. So we've lost experienced people, and people who have historical knowledge of what has happened, people who know what to do. So this constant change, the turnover, has been a major problem in the National Assembly, for instance. This 10th Assembly, well over 70, perhaps 80% of new members, which is not good for the system. So the Nigerian people must come to the point of identifying those legislators that are good and retaining them in the system, such that we can have people who can perform these functions of lawmaking, oversight, and representation effectively. And I believe that as we go on, as our democracy matures, our people will understand this better and be able to support the legislature. Today we are the whipping boy of democracy. Anything goes wrong. In fact, if a man has a problem with his wife last night, is the National Assembly that is the cause of it. So that's the situation. But in spite of all this, we've done well. Senator Nta has mentioned the doctrine of necessity, and there are many more interventions from the National Assembly. The Constitutional Review, for instance, many of the changes that we have seen that is bringing stability to the system. You talk of the Petroleum Industry Act that is changing the narrative in the petroleum industry. So there are many of such things. Talk about the Electoral Act 2022. There are many laws that one will want to mention for which the legislature should be given a pass mark for what they've done for our country.
All right, thank you. And I like that you mentioned the laws. Of course, the Electoral Act, the Not Too Young to Run
Yes, that's another one.
Act, and of course the PIA. Let me take that question to Dr. Abel Daniel Ochigbo, Deputy Clerk Administration, House of Representatives, and I'm glad you're able to join us. Of course, you're joining us from Jos. When people evaluate, the legislature, they do so on the benchmark of the quality of laws that they have passed and how those laws relate to the people or are relatable to and with the people in terms of governance and democracy. Now, if you may, looking back from probably Second Republic and now, what's your evaluation of the quality of our legislature?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me just add, when you introduced me, perhaps you didn't mention that I was Deputy Clerk Administration between 2020 and 2022. I think I should just add that. For the question you just asked, let me just say this, and I think our guests have done a very good picture trying to paint what the legislature had been over the years, from independence until now. And I actually do agree that, yes, the legislature, if you like, the National Assembly in Nigeria, is the bastion, is the buffer, is the cornerstone, is the pillar of democracy, notwithstanding a number of the challenges, particularly the a period of military interregnum, which had been one of the monsters that tried to cripple our democracy and therefore the legislature. Now, let me say that, yes, in terms of quality of bills and all that, yes, like one of our guests said, I think the legislature has done so well in trying to pass quality bills, number of bills, and so on. For instance, at a point we are studying what the Ninth Assembly had done, and we could see that in terms of the sectoral analysis of bills, you see that nearly 40% of the bills that had been assented to were those within the economy and job creation sectors. And then we have about 20% in educational reforms, and I think about 10% in the science and technology. So coming from post-independence to where we are today, you can see that much has been achieved in that area. And I think the only concern we have is that and which a number of critics have said, is that the legislature must go beyond the mere passing of bills to ensure that they enforce whatever those bills were meant to achieve. And so mere passing of bills is not the issue. So I think that is one of the issues talked about. And let me quickly mention this, that in preparing the legislature to deal with the issue of bills, quality of bills, motions, legislative measures, interventions, and so on. From the angle that I'm coming, let me mention that part of the achievements of the legislature is the fact that in 2004, I think the National Assembly Service Commission Act was passed. And that brought, good development to the legislature, that we could have a crack group of professionals that will upstage, the functions of the legislature. And that also had its effect and impact on various aspects of what the legislature does or is doing. And so, looking at that, I can say that the legislature, as someone described, has come as one institution that was seen as, relatively speaking, very timid, very inexperienced, very fragmented and very chaotic lot to what it is today, and particularly in passing of these bills and the quality of bills, a lot of what we do on the floor in plenary, to what it is today as a very visible, very coordinated, and then a very influential and a very formidable legislature. Lastly, let me say this, that from the angle we are coming, if you look at what the guests there have painted, looking at various periods in the legislature, from the First Republic, pre-colonial days to the colonial days, pre-independence, right to where we are, Fourth Republic and so on, you could see that you could categorize and say that the legislature has come as one great institution that had its formative or embryonic years, and then it came to the period that you could see it as one of political nirvana, if I may say so. It was a paradise. Those days of petrodollar years, economic challenges were not so much, and people were not too worried about what the legislature was doing or not doing, I think in relative terms. And then coming to, you know, where we are today, it's like the freezing or the boiling point of the legislature, that everybody, you know, is worried about whatever is happening in the country, and the first set of people that take the bullets are the lawmakers. Now, we know that the legislature is held in contempt virtually in every nation of the world. So the legislature has come to represent the collective will, collective aspirations, and if you like, the collective frustrations of the people. And that is the challenge we have. But I think it's done so well, particularly in the area you've mentioned, but there is a lot more to be achieved.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Daniel Ochigbo, for your thoughts there. Okay, you want to react to what, respond to some of the things? Okay.
That the legislature should go beyond making bills.
Yes.
But follow up to ensure
the implementation.
I think this is the challenge with many Nigerians. We don't understand the functions of the legislature.
Okay.
So today people expect us to do everything. The best you can do to ensure that a bill that has been signed into law is implemented is just through oversight. You cannot expect the legislature to send somebody to prison or execute the law. It's the duty of the executive. So most of the pressure we face are for things that really are not within our domain. Lawmaking, it is the domain of the executive to implement. Where they don't, citizens should be able to make use of the channel available in the judiciary. So it's not the legislature that will go on again to try to implement the law that has been made. At the best, we could oversight and point out what has gone wrong. For instance, when we do hearings, particularly investigative hearings, the reports are turned out, and the implementation of those reports don't lie within the powers of the National Assembly or the legislature. It's again back to the executive.
But the question is, how effective are your oversights?
Okay. We'll come back to that because I wanted to ask you a question. Okay. You know, initially, you know, when you spoke, you talked about the challenges, you know, facing the National Assembly. You said the fundamental lapses, and also maybe this is one of the challenges you are talking about, which I need you to address. And also, he mentioned earlier that in this country you don't have the continued experience. You know, people continue in the legislature. You keep to change them every 8 years. And how does that operate in other climes? How can we, you know, tinker? Do we need to tinker with our laws to ensure that things like that?
You cannot do that. Let me start from the, from this, and it has to be that this is one of the ugliness of Western liberal democracy. The right of the people to elect the worst and leave the best, and you don't question it. And so the high turnover we have in the legislature impacts negatively on the quality of legislation, oversight, and representation in Nigeria. And the Honorable rightly mentioned the reason. In a particular constituency, you have different compartments, and every compartment wants to be represented after. So you remove very qualitative members and you return those who are less qualitative. Now that we cannot, you can't change that by law. You can only change that by practice, by continuous practice, and so on and so forth. So there is nothing we can do about. We have to continue to educate our citizenry. They need to have quality. The President of the United States of America, for God's sake, has been in the National Assembly for more than 38 years before he became the president. And there are so many, of them like that. Yes, the Kennedys and so on and so on. So the legislator is like a wine, you see. It's also the older, the better. Like he said, anytime you elect a new representative, you have to start has to learn the rope, and then and so it hampers on this thing. Now the issue Dr. Abel was raising, which I quite agree with, has to do with the fact that the three functions of the legislature: one, lawmaking; two, oversight; three, representation. Now the legislature is ideally the policeman of the three arms of government. It's not the judiciary. And unfortunately, in the Nigerian scenario, we're trying to assume the judiciary having more powers than any of. We have seen the judiciary counsel the election of an entire state, right? And then pronouncing a supposed winner. That's unconstitutional as far as I'm concerned. So the legislature, through its oversight, must evolve ways and means of ensuring that the executive arm of government, and they are oversighting even the judiciary. They're not just oversighting the executive. So the legislature is the most powerful arm of the three arms of government. Like you said, it's not mentioned in any constitution. But wherever you are, they're listing the three arms of government. They tell you legislature, executive, and the judiciary. The judiciary is supposed to be an adjudicator. It is supposed to be an interpreter of ambivalent provisions. It's not supposed to, make new laws. They don't make laws. They only make laws by interpreting existing laws that are not clarified in the Constitution. But the judiciary cannot make any law. Just like the executive can make executive order. Executive orders are laws, but they are not as powerful as laws that are made by the parliament. So the legislature has the powers. And I think that's one of the responsibilities. And you see, it saddens a lot of us when we see the leadership of the legislature taking the responsibility very lightly. Now, the quality of any law is determined by the process and procedures that are adopted in the evolution of that law. You don't make law in one day. We've seen the current National Assembly make a law in one day. It didn't happen in 1999. It didn't happen in 2007.
Maybe because of the necessity.
Look, there is nothing like necessity. if you have a
doctrine of necessity.
Look, the doctrine of necessity was not passed in a day. It wasn't passed in a day. It took a very long time, and it was heavily rigorous. And you see that
it evolved.
Honorable, that is
discussions. But the paperwork was done in about a day.
That's what. Look, he was there. I was there.
He was Chairman.
I was there. I was
you
with
were
them.
Consultant.
Yes. So it took a long time to get it out, and that's one of the innovations that are novel as far as the Nigerian legislature is concerned. I'm not arguing about that. But for you to come up in the morning, present a bill, give it expeditious hearing, first reading, second reading, and then you give it a third reading and you pass it, I think it's making a mockery of that very, respectable. So I am saying clear that there is a need for the legislature, not just at the center, to realize the fundamental constitutional responsibilities that they have by serving as the police of the people. You have to police the executive, you have to police the judiciary. But as we are going in this country today, They are making the judiciary excessively delve into areas that do not belong. Look, we have a case in hand. The judiciary has unfortunately reinterpreted a very clear and express constitutional provision. I'm not a lawyer, but which one?
The local government autonomy. I know, Prof. I know, Prof. I know. Let's keep that on hold. Senator Enang, I'd like us to look at the issue of that oversight, because Dr. Ochigbo raised it, intrinsically, yes, in person. But it's a very fundamental aspect of the lawmaking, and a lot of people really, would really like to know how effective, that responsibility is carried out. Because sometimes, and you and I know, that when you do go out for oversight functions, some of the tools you use are provided by those you're supposed to oversight. So how effective?
You mean the spiders?
Well, yes, please give us the details.
We're talking about the logistics
now.
The vehicles,
not just logistics, everything.
Hotels and all that.
Everything.
They will transportation. And you want to oversight them.
Senator Enang,
thank you, sir.
Please give us the details of the oversight and the tools available, for you to effectively ensure that agencies and government comply with the laws that have been made.
Thank you very much. Please, I will come to the question of oversight. And I want to say that before I come to the details, that the legislature in Nigeria today has failed in its function of oversight. I pass my judgment without, I'll proceed to give my reasons like the court will say. But please let me comment on the issue that is raised, that the judiciary has exceeded its powers in going into lawmaking. The judiciary has not exceeded its powers. What the judiciary does is, it looks at the law, your powers to pass the law. Whether it is the law is within the legislative competence of the National Assembly, or whether there was an existing law before, and then it will interpret first your powers to pass that law before it comes to perhaps think of enforcing that law. So the judiciary, sometimes when it looks at many issues, it can state what the law ought to be or what the law is. Yes. And it can set aside the law that was made by saying this law, the legislature had no powers. It had exceeded its powers in so making. So the legislature at that stage is not making the law. It is simply interpreting the law.
The judiciary.
And the judiciary, I say. And then well, let me keep the other one. On the question of the oversight, I repeat again with respect and with...
I think the word you used was too strong.
Well, please allow. Please. No, please.
I say the legislature today, has not effectively, satisfactorily, and acquittedly carried out oversight responsibilities. Because what is oversight? I have passed the budget appropriation, for instance, and I have allocated money for construction of roads. Now, this is June, July. I am coming for oversight. I want to see that in this June, July, August, we are considering the possibility of how much money is supposed to be budgeted for that section, for those kind of projects in the next year. So I want to see how much money was released to you. Mm-hmm. How much money have you used? What quantum of job is remaining? What the extent of job have you done? What is remaining? How much should I budget in next year's budget? Now, when we were doing budget, when we did budget in the National Assembly under Okonjo-Iweala's first coming as Minister of Finance, and what we used to do was, we'll take every project in the budget. Mm-hmm. We look at what was the column 1. What is the name of the project? Second, what was budgeted for the project? Third, the third column is how much has been released for the project. The fourth column will be what is the level of implementation, and then what is the percentage of implementation and percentage. It will guide us when we are doing the medium-term expenditure framework, when we are planning for budgeting in the following year's budget, you know what you want to do. But these days, with the greatest respect and with pain, we have not justified that. The legislature has not justified that at both the national and the state levels. When you go, I have always given an example, a sad example. When we went for, as the Judiciary Committee, we went for budget assessment of the FCT High Court, and that is in Maitama. And we saw, because there was budgetary provision in the budget for renovation, and there was almost nothing to renovate, and the chief registrar, the administration, the court, had to scrape marble from the 5th floor down just to put it a cupboard or something, just because there was this thing. Now, these are matters that was like, we had to question it. We questioned it and we took it very serious. You know, I think that was, I was in the House or in the Senate at that time. Now, the legislature doesn't do that now. It doesn't question some of this. It doesn't even ask questions on the level of implementation. You know, I am sorry that it is coming from me. You know, as advisor to the President of National Assembly, I used to, in working on plans for oversight, I would make a brief for the ministries. I will look at the budget. I will look at what I will prepare each ministry sometimes on what they are coming, the legislature, that particular committee is coming to see, what you should. But I still had a lot of disappointment, you know, because most of the ministries, almost all the ministries, were not interested in me, in what I have prepared for them that they should prepare to answer from the legislature, because they thought the legislature wouldn't even ask those questions. You know, so the legislature would respect, sir, would respect the Senate and the House of Representatives. Please return to the core functions of the legislature, which was that public money should be spent judiciously. You cannot keep budgeting for a particular set of things, and then you are not looking to the extent to which they were executed. Now we have, how many budgets do we have running concurrently? How many budgets do we have running concurrently in last year's budget? I had interaction with a senior minister, with the Minister of the Federal Republic, and I discussed with him, Mr. Minister, Your Excellency, the Honourable Minister, now that you have submitted this to the legislature, which of the monies are we spending on this project? Now, we have said that the budget will run for next year. For the budget of last year will run this year. Are we using the money that we generated that last year for this budget that is running now? Because or is it the money that we are generating this year that we are using to execute, implement the project of last year? That in budgeting, you are expected to have money carried over from last year to be part of the money to fund the project of this year. Honourable Minister, which of the monies are we using to fund the project of this year? So when you look at things like this, you seem to agree with the public they should question the legislature the more.
But what was his response?
What was his response?
Yes, what was his response? Sorry, what was his response? Sorry, hold on. What was his response? Please, we'd like to know, what was his response?
I will plead my privilege. Thank you.
All right. Okay, fine. Wait, please. I mean, because what he's saying actually takes us to the issue of transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption, because that is what boils down, all these arguments boils down to. And that's why some Nigerians are actually angry with the legislature. But we will take that after the break. Just stay with us.
The dreams that our founding fathers envisaged are still work in progress. every day we put our hands on the plow, determined to do a better job of it. While it is tempting to focus on what has been left undone and where we have stumbled as a nation, we must never lose sight of how far we have come in forging and holding our country together.
Registration for the UN FCCC COP29 is now open. To register, visit nigccdelegation.natccc.gov.ng. To get started, find the Create Account button at the top right corner of your screen. Click it to proceed. Please note that all delegate accounts must be created by an authorized contact person or nominee representing your organization or MDA. Before starting, ensure you have the following documents ready for upload. 1. A scanned copy of the authorized contact's ID. 2. A letter approving participation from your organization, including nominee names, and any other supporting documents. To create a delegate account, click Create Account in the top right corner again. Select the delegate option and take a moment to read the important notice on the next page. Click Proceed at the bottom of the notice page to continue with your registration. Complete all required fields in the Create Account for your organization form. Upload the necessary documents as prompted. Once all information is filled out, click Sign Up at the bottom of the page. An email verification will be sent to your registered email address. It is essential to check your inbox and activate your account to complete the registration. After activating your account, return to the portal and log in to proceed. Click your profile in the top right corner to add delegates. Find the Add Delegates Nominees button on the right side. Click to proceed. You will need to upload each delegate's passport biodata page. Note that each organization is limited to a maximum of 3 delegates. After adding all delegates, your registration on the portal is now complete. You will receive a notification email. Check your email and portal profile regularly to monitor the status of your accreditation request. An email will notify you once approval is confirmed. If you are registering as a negotiator, click the Register a Negotiator button on the home screen. Read the important notice carefully before filling out the account creation form. Submit the form and verify your email address. You can log in to check the status of your accreditation request. You will receive an email upon approval. International organizations interested in scheduling a meeting at the Nigeria Delegation Office can use the International Organization Meeting Request button on the homepage to request a meeting. For more information on the UNFCCC COP29 conference, including trip planning and logistics, explore the How It Works and FAQs sections on the portal. For further assistance, click the Contact Us button at the top right corner of the homepage. Fill out your details and our support team will assist you.
Join the party on AfroSport TV as Libya's Mediterranean Knights host the Super Eagles at the Matazo Benania Stadium in the AFCON 2025 qualifiers on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, live on AfroSport TV at 8 p.m. West African time for what promises to be an unforgettable encounter in the AFCON 2025 qualifiers. AfroSport, your freedom of sport.
You're welcome back. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, the network service of the NTA, where we're still talking about the legislature. Well, before we took that break, I was going to ask you, I asked you a question which we're about to answer. We were talking about the issue of transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption role of the legislature, how effective has it been? Because all these issues that we have been talking about actually boils down on those three issues.
Yeah, I would like to react to what Senator Itayang, my predecessor, who said the benchmark in our committee, rules and business in the House. I give you that. But he had mentioned what he perceives as a lowering of standards in oversight functions. I want to assure him and Nigerians that all those set standards in budgetary reviews are still in place. So we still do all those checks as to what was budgeted, what has been released, the percentage completion. We still do all of that. I want to assure you and Nigerians that that is still being done till today. When you look at the three duties that we perform, you will find that our lawmaking power exercise has improved tremendously. And the representation is also improving very well. The area where we seem to lag behind is the area of oversight. But it is not as bad as the distinguished senator was painting it as failed. No, we're also making progress in that area. All the templates that has been used from time immemorial are still there, and in fact even improved. You can see the results in many areas. I remember I went to an oversight in the 9th Assembly. I was in the Committee of Power, I was the deputy chair, to one of these GENCOs, and they were not generating. And we called the MD and the management, what's wrong, why are you not? They said they got a message from TCN that the discos were rejecting power because they can't pay. We said, a situation where Nigerians don't have electricity, you can generate, then the discos are rejecting power. Right there and then, we put in calls to a couple of discos, and instantly the GENCO started production. But you know that the gas GENCOs, they'll keep producing. It's a question of take or pay. So whether you take it or not, government must pay. So they were able to change that situation in that very circumstance. So there are many of such. When you talk about transparency in the matter of oversight, that brings the challenge of funding. And I agree that there are situations where agencies provide the logistics, your hotel, your transportation, and all of that. But that is also changing. I know that there are committees in this 10th Assembly, even in the 9th, where the chairman refused all such and went all out to do the right thing. It's just that good news don't make news in our country. It's the exceptions, where there is wrongdoing that is blown up and everybody knows. But to say that everybody that goes on oversight, every committee that goes on oversight is not doing it in the interest of the country is completely not true.
Do you oversight the NNPC and the central bank?
Of course we do. And if you look at the news review, you'll find that we've always had challenges with these two agencies in terms of when the committee oversight even invites them, you have challenges. In the 9th Assembly, for instance, the CBN governor hardly responded to any invitation, the then CBN governor. So, and we made noise over it. There was even the time when we wanted to issue a warrant of arrest, until there were interventions from the executive and all of that. So we do oversight them, but again, it depends again on the executive who implements, because if you issue the warrant of arrest, who is going to execute it? It's the executive. So when the IG, for instance, have orders or gives orders that such executive who has been summoned and refused the summons should be arrested and he's not arrested, what do? When you don't approve the appointment, the Senate does not confirm the appointment of somebody nominated by the president, and the person continues in that office till the end of the tenure of that president, what do you do as a legislator? You can't take the gun and kill the person
actually,
or something.
That's really...
But we kept making the noise about it.
Yeah.
And the Nigerian people did not rise up to speak in our support. And this is the issue.
But what can be done to check such?
That's what I wanted.
What can be done to check such
Yes.
is for the Nigerian people to own our country. when we see such aberrations, we should speak out. And when such people are carrying out their duties, they should be abandoned. They should be, for instance, if he's a minister of, say, roads, for instance, and he comes to commission a road, nobody should be there. The IG should not produce police backup and support. When all those kind of things are happening, the powers of the legislature will be respected. So what we find today is the exceptions that are being blown out. But when you find these credible situations, even in institutions that should take, for instance, the Federal Character Commission. There was a time when the Federal Character Commission in this country, a few years ago, did not observe federal character. The chief executive, the executive, all of them were from one political, and we spoke. A motion was moved on the floor, and the president was asked to effect changes. Nothing. There was a time when the chief executive of even the EFCC was not cleared by the Senate, but yet he went on to perform those functions. So the issue here is for the Nigerian people. Civil society can go to court. Those people can be abandoned when they are doing their duties. There are a lot of things we can do as Nigerian people.
Is that not the issue between the legislature and the executive, not the Nigerian people? Because, I mean, it's the executive that's supposed to implement that, to do that, to call that officer to, you know, to order.
We don't yet understand that government is for the people, by the people.
Yeah.
So the people have a role to play. They cannot abandon somebody they voted for.
Please,
so
let's not abandon Dr. Uchigbo.
Okay.
Dr. Uchigbo, please, we need you to weigh in here. It's been an interesting conversation. So to make the legislature do their work like you have suggested, especially in oversight, what can be done? What should be the role of the people? Of course, Representative Francis here is calling on the people. So what can the people really do?
Thank you so much. Let me say this and then let it be a slight preamble. Yes, what can the people do? But before we get to the people, let's see something. With all the descriptions we've had so far, it's easy to summarize the legislature as one, like we've said, is passing through a nascent phase, a fledgling phase, a learning phase, and all that. But even with that, I come out to say that when you look at the struggles of the Nigerian National Assembly, sometimes I pick this picture of what looks like a hop-on, hop-off syndrome. That's one. Two, you see a kind of stretch, and it's a bit of challenge between what I will call legislative infrastructure and stomach infrastructure. We can say all that we want, but the people are very worried. Whatever you are doing, bills and all that, is it bringing food to my table? And so it is within this milieu that you come to see other things. And let me say this, us at this level is to aggregate what is in the public space. And just like the honorable member is saying there, yeah, it's good for you to look at them and, bring up responses, but then the facts are there that these are the challenges. What are people saying? What are people complaining of? So the issue of accountability comes up. Now, there are other issues like issues of political patronage. There are other issues of what they call playing to the gallery. There is what they call unnecessary politicization of issues. So all these things are within the public space. And I think these are the issues that the legislature, through its members, must deal with first before even talking about the people. Because the people largely see the legislature as not summoning the right will and courage to face their assignments. I tell you one, if you read, and it's not just me saying this, but there are different types of legislature. One of them is rubber stamp. When you ask most people on the street, where will they categorize the Nigerian National Assembly? And, you know, we can take that as a separate thing. So the issue is that there are challenges, there are problems, there are things we must deal with. Now, to the people thing, you said, yes, when it comes to this issue of democracy and the legislature, it gets to a point that we're all in it. Now, let me face the issue of the people that you asked. Sometimes the people are our problems. But like I've just said, before we look at the people, let's look at ourselves. But the people, you see, you can't have a better legislature than the kind of people you have. Today, every lawmaker will agree that he or she is under intense pressure from the constituents and the voters and so on. And it gets to a point that we really wonder whether our people understand the duties, the functions, the roles, the duties of a legislature. I've had this talk while I was in the assembly. And a number of lawmakers told me, went out to do primaries, and then people tell you, we don't care whatever you are doing there. We just want you to, share money to us and all that. You don't go there and be speaking grammar. What we are interested in is what comes to us. That's why I'm talking about, is it about legislative infrastructure or is about stomach infrastructure? So I think we need a very serious public education for our electorate to understand that the calling of a member, the calling of a lawmaker is not just to come, it's not to come and then get money at all costs and then cheer around and all that. But so let people understand what is lawmaking. And like it's been very well said there, we have to really give fillip to this issue of lawmaking, this issue of representation, and this issue of oversight. But it will appear that at one level, we are failing by ourselves. Oversight, are we doing it very well? Are we really doing what oversight is? And I think much has been said. But then I've ended up by saying that the people too have a duty to ensure that they are putting the right people there, people who have gone to do the right job, the relevant job, not people who have gone to mint money for you, or people who really are there to ensure that Nigeria is developed within the right frame of what development should be.
Very much, Dr. Daniel Ochibo, the people actually need to do the right thing. And also, he mentioned the fact that, I mean, the legislature must have the right will and the courage also to do the right thing. And that brings me to the next question, because we do not have much time any longer. Let me just ask, Professor. The relationship between the legislature and the executive, how would you describe it? Because he said something when he was talking about, when you summon people to the National Assembly, some of these executives and of parastatals, and they refuse to come. And they still go ahead.
And they get the backing of the
executives. Yes. I mean, what does he tell? I mean, how would you describe the relationship between the executives and the legislature in all these years?
Well, you see, ideally, under a democratic system, the relationship is supposed to be collaborating.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a collaborative relationship. It's not supposed to be a subservient relationship. I don't judge the legislature by the level of confrontation that it has with the executive arm of government. But I always, measure the legislature in terms of its ability to stand by the Constitution and act as such. And, once there is peace between executive and legislature, it is a tendency in our society, the people to begin to assume that something is wrong. That's not it, ideally. Okay. But then, of course, by the time the legislature continues to behave in a manner that is funny, not doing what it's supposed to do, any bill that is dumped by the executive is given expeditious passage without going through the necessary protocols of legislation. I think that's what Nigerians should be worried about, not when there is peace. And I'm worried when the legislature begins to sing the praises of a sitting president or a sitting governor. you know, it sends jitters in the minds of a lot of people because ideally, you know, people expect confrontation. I don't expect. I expect that there should be collaboration, but every
collaboration, not confrontation.
Fine, no, collaboration, not confrontation. Every arm of government must get its own constitution. Look, it is the constitution that assigns rules and responsibilities to every organ, every level of government. None gives to the other. And the constitution forbids any organ of government from interfering or denying the other organ of government from discharging its responsibility. So I want to see the citizens are more comfortable if they see the legislature and the judiciary playing their roles independent of one another, but then collaborating because it is one government. By the time we begin to see phony judgments coming from the courts, by the time we begin to see phony passage of bills, you know, without necessary legislative scrutiny, we ask questions. By the time we see the executive dancing to the tune of both the legislature and the judiciary, calls for concern. So every arm of government, just like every level of government, that's why, you know, the two levels, two organs of government are political, executive and the legislature. The judiciary is comprised of people who are supposed to be noble, people who have, you know, one of the major crises that Nigerian democracy is facing today, in my humble opinion, is that there is a need for the legal institution, the legal profession, the lawyers. My friend Nta is one of them, but he's not in practice. And the judiciary, oh, you practice now. Thank you very much. And the judiciary, if we are not careful, clear, that institution is likely to bring down or continue to demean the democratic experience.
You know, someone just said we may need a two-part on this conversation. I just read, I said, let me just say it loud so that we know that, you know, we will
there's so much
yeah,
to talk
there's so
about.
much to talk. But Senator Enang, again, on the issue of oversight, I know that the legislature, the National Assembly, is supposed to be part of the NNPC's budget. It's also supposed to have a role in the monetary policies of the CBN, how, you know, they come about their, you know, monetary, you know, issues to address the issues of inflation. But in all of this, the legislature, like he said, have its own challenges, getting these two, you know, institutions to comply. How can they go about it when they meet such deadlock?
I think I've said in this program, I've had many opportunities to say that Nigerians should ask one question. Is it the NNPC or the central bank that owns Nigeria? Or is it Nigeria that owns the NNPC or the central bank? Because the central bank and the NNPC have always behaved as if they are the owners of Nigeria. And Nigeria is they're just simply doing Nigeria a favor. That is the central bank and that is the NNPC. And again, I've also held that, with the greatest respect to the legislature, my colleagues and my brothers, the economic challenge we have today, the way that the economy of this country has descended into, the collapse of the currency is found on the doorsteps of the legislature. Yes, because if the legislature, not the present executive, not the present set of the legislature, is consistent legislature, it is a consistent failure of the National Assembly to find out the level of implementation of the budget. It is the failure of the legislature to find out the activities of the central bank. It is the current state of it is the failure of the legislature to hold the NNPC to account. You know, quantum of production, how much have we released for our refineries? To what extent has those refineries gone working? Now, NNPC has descended to just negotiating market price of crude of Dangote. They have forgotten that they gave money for refineries to be revamped and so on and so on. So, and the legislature, when it's faced like this, Nigerians should stand up. I believe that we should. The people should stand up, and the legislature should stand up and question the NNPC. Question the central bank, because I had occasion in the Senate in 2012. I brought a bill to amend the Central Bank Act, to amend the NNPC Act. I brought the bill to enable, to force the central bank to bring its budget to the legislature, to force the NNPC to bring its budget to the legislature. And when I brought that bill, the central bank governor came and said that on the Central Bank Act, that their board is supposed to pass their own budget. And I drew the attention of the central bank to the fact that we passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act after the Central Bank Act, and that the Central Bank Act is inferior. I mean, it's not that the Fiscal Responsibility Act takes precedence over the CBN Act in terms of the passage of the budget. And even when they bring the budget, you will see something that looks like a masquerade. They will never tell you this is what they do on this. They will just say X. It's like what you used to tell us in school: find X. You know, the central bank budget.
Where do you see the X?
I mean, so I think the country should just sit back and hold. In fact, we should dissolve NNPC.
Dr. Ina, we'll find the X.
Yes, we will continue.
We know that you are so passionate about this, and we're looking for X. Honorable, we actually, the director is just signaling that we should just call it a day, but just in 30 seconds, just wrap it up.
My thoughts is that the Nigerian people need to come to terms with the functions of the legislature, so that we're able to judge based on that job specification.
We all have to come to terms.
Support the legislature when these kind of infractions are happening. Not only when they see the wrong things done by the legislature, but when you find the CBN, for instance, the NNPC, for instance, doing all of these things, and the legislature is making the point. The country should stand behind the National Assembly.
Stand behind the legislature. Thank you so much, Honorable Ejiro Gene Francis Waive, Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Rules and Business and member representing Ugweli North and South Udu Federal Constituency. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
My pleasure.
And Dr. Nta Ina, former Senior Special Assistant to the President, National Assembly. Thank you so much for coming. Professor Kabil Mato, political analyst, thank you as usual for coming.
Thank you very much.
And also we want to appreciate from Jos, Dr. Abel Daniel Ochigbo. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yes, and I do hope when we have a second conversation, I do hope everyone, honorable member, you definitely be part of our conversation. Of course, we know how to get Dr. Nta and Professor Kabil. All right, that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
All right, I'm Ademola Adeoye. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely day.